Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you might be. We're back. It's
We're
Tuesday
back for
morning.
more. We're back for more. Welcome, everyone. It's a good
We
morning.
had to do that. When we did that video, I got so used to, I had to say the same thing over and over and over again that I almost keep saying it each time now.
It's your signature line, man. I mean, you have to say it, right?
Well, I guess so.
Say it.
So, anyway,
Ah,
how are you
how
this
you doing?
morning?
I am good. It's a lovely day. I can't wait to go outside and take my laptop with me and work from the yard, the back garden, whatever it's called, backyard, I guess. We finally got some decent furniture, and we can now sit after 2.5 years. We can actually enjoy the outdoors, which is great, and an umbrella, so we don't get
Yeah.
sunburned. Because man, there's a lot of surface here to get burned.
Yeah,
So yeah,
we would go outside, but there's so much pollen that everywhere you sit, the back half of you turns green. So,
that's true. I
kind of
was
give
uh, I
up.
was closing the umbrella yesterday, and there was like dust or pollen just falling down. And I said to my wife, "This is
Oh, I know it's awful. I hate it.
we're not allergic, so luckily we're very fortunate from that perspective. But I feel for other people that have severe allergies because I can't believe how they're outdoors right now. How they can be outdoors.
Yeah, no, I mean it's every morning I wake up and it's just like my son's
Yeah,
really allergic too. So the both of us just stay inside. We're like, yeah, whatever. We've evolved past it. We'll stay inside until May, and then we'll go back outside. And then we're going to go to Michigan anyway because it's going to be 900 degrees here. So
but
we'll get out of
your
here.
your
Yeah.
upstairs office will be ready soon, so you're gonna be enjoying morning
Yep.
fishes. How you doing,
That's
buddy?
right.
Yeah, the upstairs office will be there. So there you go. You can enjoy almost the outdoors. You can see outside.
Yeah, I'll get some
You'll be able to
sunlight.
see outside. Oh, it's
Get
so
some
so
vitamin
nice.
D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're doing okay, Jesus? That doesn't sound like very positive start of the day or ending the day. Looking for change. Change? What kind of change? Do you want us to change the stream? I mean, we've changed the background. See, we don't have the green screen anymore.
Yeah. It got to well, I guess we couldn't use them, so.
Oh,
A
career.
career change. What are you going to leave?
Whoa.
You like leaving programming or looking to like switch jobs or what are you trying to do?
Don't move to marketing. I did that. Hey, hey, Bolt. Happy time zone. I mean, it was good being in marketing, but man, I missed being technical. And it's nice to see how that part of the org works. Microsoft does marketing in a very specific way. But yeah, I wanted to get back into writing code, writing awful code. By the way, John Gallen pinged me yesterday and he said, "Hey, I copied some of your code from a blog post in 2014." And I feel dread and excitement at the same time. And he didn't tell me which blog he copied code from, so I have no idea whether it's current, whether it works. And people were checking Azure.status or status.azure.com yesterday to see if he deployed something that broke Azure. I love the confidence that people have in my code. Looking for a company I can get behind. I mean, yeah.
Start your own. I've thought about it. Be
I
nice.
thought I thought about it, but I'm too old, too
No
late.
bosses, no managers, just yourself and your partners. I don't know. Be nice.
He did that twice,
Yeah.
so I think he's looking for something more stable. I don't know, stable. What do you
Well,
call it? Reliable? Oh, you sold the IP, man. Are you looking to work for hobby now? Then you make lots of money, and then you're just working for hobby. I hope you
we've
sold the IP for a significant amount of money. Did you, JP? You had something on the go for that thing. Did that ever land?
still going.
Oh man.
So I don't know. We'll find out. We 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I started a company with a buddy.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if you can still call it a startup after 10 years, but 10 years ago, I started a company, and the guy. Piece of advice: don't start a company with two lawyers. That was one thing I learned. So one guy was an attorney, but he was a
Hmm.
Microsoft. He was a Microsoft engineering manager for a long time. He was an attorney, and his firm sent him to Russia and said, "If you do this for 25 years, you'll make partner." And he was like, "I don't want to do that." So he went to Microsoft and he came here to work. And he worked there for 15 years, and then he became my manager, and we started working together. And so he knew how to lawyer at least.
Okay.
And so one of the things he said was, "Well, let's take this thing that we're working on and let's put IP around it." And I was like, "Okay," because I didn't know, because I was 25, 26 years old. And so now, 4 patents later, and a bunch of attorney money later, 4 patents, which is cool. Well, 3 with a 4th almost granted. So that's cool. And then, we got people who are wanting to pay for it, which is even nicer. So I'll take it. I mean, it's like super weird and stressful and whatever, but I learned a bunch about Azure when I was doing it, which is why I did it. And, I don't know. It was cool. So, somehow, I don't know if it was like good attorneys or what, but somehow we managed to patent what is essentially a proxy.
Okay.
And because it's sort of like a kind of like a workflow. It's sort of a workflow thing where messages come in and they go different places based on criteria.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I learned a lot about. Well, I learned a lot about myself in that I have no business running a business, so I don't know anything about sales. Like, it's just
I like how you advise people to start businesses, but at the same time.
Well, no, I just mean like it's. You got to find somebody you got to find a good partner who knows the business side, because I didn't really, and still kind of don't. And even and obviously people can learn that kind of stuff, but it's just so exhausting, at least for me. And so I kind of let the other guys do it. And I don't know. It was just a weird, I don't know. It was a cool thing. Don't get me wrong. But, the code is 10% of the business, I guess, is what I learned.
Oh yeah. You need to do your own marketing. You need to do your own sales. So running your own business, it's way more than just being technical. So if you just want to be technical, what I found from being a consultant and running my own business, which was more of a contracting or subcontracting, was that I had to do a lot of marketing myself, and I had to do a lot of sales, and then I had to stay technical as well. So you wear many hats. Accounting, you have to do your own accounting. You have to manage your expenses. You have to do your own payroll. And then if you get more people, then that also becomes a challenge. So just be prepared that if you're going into that kind of adventure, then you're bringing a lot of other responsibilities into play. But some people like that, and some people thrive in managing their own businesses. So that
So I don't know. It was kind of I tell you, the thing I learned the most was I learned a whole lot about writing software that people can choose to use, which is, you do enterprise dev and you can sort of force people to use your software no matter how bad it might be. I learned a lot about deployment, learned a lot about monitoring, and learned a lot about Azure, because we started in AWS and it was cool. But then I was like, what do I get? I mean, these are just VMs, right? So I switched to Azure and kind of immediately fell in love with it. I was like, man, this is amazing. All I got to do is write the code in a way that doesn't make me look like an idiot, and then deploy it. And then Azure does all the hard work for me, distributed caches across nodes and all sorts of kind of stuff. And I don't know. It's I don't know. It's just been interesting. So, so we've been talking to folks about licensing and buying IP and all that, which is an expensive attorney-driven conversation. But I don't know. It's kind of cool that somebody finds it interesting enough that they want to use it. So
yeah.
And then on another note, I got pulled over this morning, so that was fun.
Sound one for everyone, or is that just you, Bolt?
I don't know.
PL is PL Philadelphia? Is that Philadelphia PL?
PL Philadelphia would probably be PHL. I don't know. Poland. Nice. Okay. Welcome. Good afternoon, then, Poland.
And
cool. My wife's family's from Poland.
Really? Have you been?
Yeah.
Have you guys been?
No.
No.
I'd like to go, but no. I'd like to go, but I got a speeding ticket this morning. I haven't had a speeding ticket in about 15 years, so he was like, well, how'd you do in 48 and a 35 or something like that? I was like, okay. I didn't really know what to say. I was like, I guess, whatever, man. And then he gave me a ticket. And
Be careful what you say. That could be used as public admission. So I'm not an attorney here, but I'm just saying.
all I said to him was, okay. That's it. I'm not saying I was. I'm just saying I
Okay.
said, okay. And he came back and
Did he chase you? Was there a chase? Or did he light up the lights and you just like, shit, I got caught?
well, I was getting close to my house, and so I was about to turn right anyway, and
Oh.
then I saw him pull out, and I was like, oh no, I hope he's not coming after me. But there's nobody near me. I was like, oh no, he is coming for me.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he was
Like, well,
running to get to the stream to get everything set up. So you're absolutely right.
That's right.
Scipio.
I should try the emergency defense. Be like, no, I was in a hurry because I had a show to do. I had a show to do in 2 hours.
Our audience is expecting me. I can't be there. I have to poop. Yeah. Oh, that's
a good one. Yeah.
I wonder if
Or just be like, oh my god, my stomach, and just vomit everywhere. And be like, oh my, and he's just like, oh, they leave you alone.
I bet there's a pill for that. Although we just discussed it, half of the audience here, so maybe we should change the conversation.
Well, whatever. Anyway, so what you got? What you got for us in terms of news today, Christos?
We got news. I mean, we're going back to Node.js because I want to get this damn thing sorted and we can do a blog post about it. But today, we're gonna be share my screen, buddy. We're gonna be looking at Azure AD and Node.js authentication, and then we're gonna use the Azure SDKs to actually call Cosmos DB using announced identity, so we don't have to have any secrets. But we have a ton of news as well, and I think like and this one is related. This blog post is related to what we will be doing today. Cosmos DB now supports RBAC and it also supports Azure AD authentication. So as long as you have the appropriate library, you can go and call Cosmos without passing a credential, which is fantastic, and we'll show that today on the show. At the same time, there was a massive announcement that landed yesterday. Check that glorious title out there. And people have been asking, like, is there gonna be a Visual Studio 2022? Is it happening? I've known for a while, but I couldn't talk about it because obviously it hadn't been announced, and it was all, even prior to NDA. So Amanda Silver, our CVP for the DevDev, went on the blog post yesterday to announce, and on Twitter and everywhere else, to say that there will be a Visual Studio 2022 version. I think that's going to be version 17 something, because we have some weird numbering behind the scenes for stuff. The current 2019 is 16x. So right now I think there's 1610 or something. Now, the biggest one, there's a lot to unpack here, but the biggest news is the 64-bit support. And people have gone nuts about it. Mainly because, the Visual Studio team has been saying, we don't need a 64-bit version, and who would need a 64-bit version? So the community has been demanding it, and then we're not going to do it.
If you don't have a 64-bit version, the best way to say is, what do you need that for? Right?
Sales tactic, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, well, until you have a 64-bit version, then it's the greatest thing that's ever been made. I think Rider has been 64-bit for a while. I know that was
yes.
That was one of the big comments. Of course, like some of this things, somebody posted a video yesterday of somebody opening. Oh, maybe it was that one. Maybe it was this video right here of 1,600 projects and 300,000 files. And I'm just kind of thinking, like,
oh my God.
I kind of feel like maybe. I'm sure there's plenty of software out there that is that way, but who can meaningfully work in 1,600 projects at a single time? Like that just seems like such an edge case. It's cool that we're winning because of that, but
it's crazy, right? Imagine on your first day landing on your desk in a company and they say, right, go and where are you from? I'm from Greece, and JP is from here. He's bred and raised in South Carolina, North Carolina.
No, not South Carolina. Thank you very much. Give me a little bit of credit.
Okay.
I know my teeth aren't straight, but I still have them all. Thank you. So, yeah, no, I'm from North Carolina, and I moved to South Carolina. I tried to get out, but it's like crabs in a bucket. They pull you back in.
So I was accurate. I mean, you were born and raised in North Carolina, but now you're residing in South Carolina. That doesn't make you a South Carolinian. Carolinian, is that the right term? But
Carolinian.
Carolinian, okay. Somebody said that Phil Snubble is saying that this is probably the Stack Overflow project or the Stack
Oh
Overflow
yeah, it could be. Yeah. Although even still, like I don't know, that just seems like it
insane
seems like an enormous. I don't
project to
know.
work
I
on.
don't know. I don't know. Whatever. I mean, to
No
each their
judgment
own.
passed.
Not saying it's invalid. Just saying that it's. I'm surprised that that would be a thing that a lot of people would need.
Yeah, there are sub solutions, but then again, I don't feel that this is a nice way to manage big projects. Surely you can do some decomposition there and have stuff that can be broken down. Phil Snubble wants a 128-bit version. We're gonna be working on that. Just raise a user voice item, and then we will take it into consideration. But first, we need
Thanks
some
for your
hardware to run
feedback.
it.
Yeah. No, we need
Right,
a Visual Studio Quantum.
Quantum. Oh man,
So
that would be a
is
while.
Visual Studio still like 9,000 gigs? Because if it's not, maybe I'll reinstall it. Because I've only been using VS Code recently, and I'm kind of getting used to it.
Yeah, I don't know what the size is currently, but I started learning Rust yesterday. I know, and it does require. It has a massive dependency on C++. So the best way to do it is to install Visual Studio. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be doing Rust in VS Code, but I still need Visual Studio to compile stuff and make it happen. That didn't sound too good. But albeit
Hmm.
that's on Windows. I don't know what the experience looks like in Linux and Mac OS native. But anyway,
Hmm.
um, I think it's big depending on what workload you choose, right? So the cell is fairly small, and then if you start adding things like UWP and other stuff, then it becomes big. But it's in the gigs, right? VS says, does VS really use 4 GB? I thought it was distributed across multiple processes. Well, they spin up some out of process processes, so it doesn't take over the UI kind of thing. And that's how they tried to do it up until this point, especially for C++ projects that were massive. But obviously, that hasn't really solved the underlying problem, hence the 64-bit version Visuals. And yeah, once we get into Quantum, then you don't actually need to write code because you have all the code staged in one go. You can have your code compiling and not compiling at the same time. Would that not be insane? I don't know. Is that the case with Quantum? I guess. Right.
Don't know. All right.
Improve design. Improve design. So they're flattening the icons yet again, and they're refreshing them to make them more readable. I wonder if they still have the floppy disk for saving. Is there a different metaphor for younger generations to be able to understand what the floppy icon does? Like,
No, my child is not going to have any idea what that is.
but we still use it as the analogy for saving stuff. Anyway, developing modern apps, better integration with Azure, um, pre-built GitHub workflows, better support for CI/CD, and deploying and managing Azure resources. It comes with .NET 6 fully supported, including MAUI, the .NET multi-platform app UI. And by multi-platform, we mean iOS, Android, and Windows desktop. Then better Blazor support. Are they adding Blazor or no?
Wasn't
You
there a
cannot.
bunch of drama about that? I seem to remember about Maui and
Uh,
like the name or something.
there
I don't really
was,
remember.
there was. I have no
Yeah.
idea how they managed to resolve that. I haven't
Okay.
followed that, but yeah. Does Microsoft Identity support roles for B2C apps? Hey JP,
Nope.
that's a question from you. For you.
It does not.
What?
We I've been working on a project for a customer that essentially pushes app roles into B2C and then some
Mm-hmm.
management API on top of it. I will put the link here in the chat. It's I haven't had a whole lot of time to work on it in the past couple weeks, but it is getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really two main components. Here, I'll share. I'm going to share my screen really quickly,
Go
Christos.
for it. Go for it.
Um, so there are two main components, and depending on what you need. you may find that it's enough for you, right?
Yeah.
So here's the link. When the user is going to sign in, oh, this doesn't work very well. I don't know why. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
This is fine. So when the user goes to sign in, we call a REST API, and the REST API right now is a function, but ultimately what it does is go and call graph. So the way that B2C works, it doesn't actually, you don't sign in directly to Azure AD, the underlying Azure AD. You sign into B2C, and then B2C does some magic and talks to the underlying Azure AD to sign you in.
Yep.
So we are essentially replicating that magic because all the plumbing is there. It's just not, it doesn't come through the tokens.
Yeah,
so what this project sets out to do is, on the one hand, when a user signs in, it takes the user's role memberships that they're a member of and pushes them into the token.
Nice.
And all that means you have to do is modify your manifest to include the app roles for your apps and then put users into those roles. If it's only you and your compatriots at work or wherever who are going to be putting users into that roles, and you can stop here because you can just go to the portal and add users to those roles. That is the case with some of the customers that we've talked to, and this works, right? So this way you don't have to have any external databases. You don't have to have anything extra. All you need is to run this function to go and pull the user's roles in and stuff them into the token. That covers the runtime bit, so getting the roles into the token, which is certainly helpful. However, the second half of the question is usually, okay, cool. I want my customers to be able to manage their own users. So in B2C, there's really no concept of an organization, right? And because of that, there's no way to say Christos can manage only Microsoft people, or Carl can manage only the people at Carl's muffler shop or whatever. And so there's a second project in here, which is an administrative portal. The admin portal kind of attempts to do that. So the admin portal, this is the part that pushes the roles in. The admin portal side is the thing that goes and manipulates the graph to get to the point of where essentially the UI restricts who can put what users and what app roles. So it's sort of like it's like a graph filter. So it filters the users you can search for to only the users in your organization, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can assign them in. It still uses graph to store the assignment data. But this function, actually it's web API now, but this API essentially says, okay, your user 123 and your organization is 456. So the only users that you can assign are users 456, or users in the same organization as you. So this has a little bit of extra storage requirement because we have to store an organization list, but that's really about it. But yeah, so it's coming along. The admin API is probably about 70-80% done in terms of coverage. The UI is super ugly because I'm not very good at writing UI. But there's also, you'll notice, there's a web API host in here and a function host, and these are just two hosts that essentially wrap the same thing. So if you want to run it in functions, you can. Functions is kind of a pain because of how authorization works in functions, and it's just not very clean. So instead, I did it in web API. Web API is pretty clean. I kind of like it, and it seems to work fairly well. But anyway, contributions are welcome too. So if you're interested and you want to help, or if you're interested in using it, by all means, please feel free to contribute and submit pull requests, and we will make sure they get reviewed and get up there. And then once we're done, we're going to probably make this as sort of like an official type of a sample. So yeah, that's it.
That, and eventually,
Cool.
or hopefully, it will make it the B2C product itself, so you don't have to have this add-on. This is what we're trying to achieve anyway here.
Yeah. So good luck. And of course, if there are any questions, be sure to join Discord. And you feel free to ask us questions on there.
Absolutely.
If you're not on Discord already,
man, you beat me to
give
that.
it to us.
You're so fast.
So, all right.
Discord.
Okay. So what other news you got, Christos?
Okay, let's move on from Visual Studio. There's a lot of stuff there. We'll provide you with the links. In fact, I think I put the links on the chat by mistake. So I gave away all our news before we even started. enhance productivity for Git in Visual Studio. So if you are a Visual Studio person, then some goodness there for working with Git and better integration with Git and more support. And now that same support will be coming to Visual Studio for Mac with the 2022 version. So that's exciting. Next one, let's move on to some security news. These days, attackers are finding more novel ways to attack you. So I would say that malware that spreads via Xcode projects is now a possibility, and that targets M1-based Macs. So be careful what projects you download off the internet, and please make sure that you check the sources for that. There's no fix as yet, so please be careful with that. It's something that's happening out there. Now, the next one is something that I came across. It's a fantastic podcast. If you are interested in security and learning how things are happening in the world, they bring some real life stories. They anonymize stuff so they don't expose companies or whatever, but this is a fantastic podcast. It's actually quite short as well, so it only takes 20 minutes to go through. So short episodes, super punchy, very nice content. I learned about yesterday I learned how hackers are hacking PBXs to make money by calling numbers and not answering. So they continuously go into a loop. This is insane, right? People are making money out of that. And those PBXs are not secured well. In fact, companies don't have any interest in securing them. So it's a moneymaker thing, better than Bitcoin. So I just said that. Please don't hack PBXs. And finally, we just announced a new Rust learning module on MS Learn. And I know that sounds weird, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna learn Rust. And I started going through the course. As you can see, I just finished yesterday. I had enough time to install Rust, hence the experience with Visual Studio. It supports both Windows, Linux. No, it's not both. It supports Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. So they have instruction for all of these operating systems if you want to play around yourselves. And I'm currently in module 2. My goal is to see whether I can use an OpenID Rust library and authenticate against Azure AD. So that will take me a few weeks to get there, but because I was looking at that code, I was like, damn, that is a lot of undecipherable code. I need to understand what's happening, but it's a fun thing to do, learning something new. Go and have a look. We have also a fantastic Python course if you want to learn Python, but a lot of free content out there. Go and have a look. And that's me. That is me. That's me with the news. I don't know if you have anything else other than your ticket, JP.
We do have, there's one other thing. So a buddy of ours, a guy named Anton, who works here at Microsoft, works over in Germany. Really super cool guy.
I got it. It's here.
So he has created, so anybody who's used B2C knows there's like a run now button for checking your user flows, which is super useful when you're just testing.
Yes.
He has created essentially the same thing for Azure AD via a Chrome extension, which is super awesome. So it means you can install it. So there's a link. We got a link here to the extension, and it's a Chrome extension, so it works in Chrome and Edge and whatever. And what's cool about it is when you open an app registration in Azure AD, and click the extension, you get the option to essentially generate an authorized URL. With all sorts of different things, like what kind of request you want to do. You want to do like a hybrid request, implicit, authorization code, etc., with certain scopes, and then you can do a run. Then you can do a run and just essentially run through your authorization. So it's pretty cool, pretty exciting stuff.
Can we run it? Will it work? I'm curious. So what do I need to do here? Is it just that? And then say ID token? API permissions.
ID token alone is going to give you, it's going to be implicit. So the response type is ID token is implicit ID token. Token is implicit access token. ID token is implicit for both, which we don't want to use. Then code is authorization code. And then code ID token is authorization code, or is hybrid, which is authorization code for access tokens, and implicit for an ID token. So if you were to run that, your response is going to be the response that's going to come is going to be an authorization code that you have to go and redeem. So for testing in the browser, it's probably easier to do ID token, but that means you have to turn on implicit, which of course we don't necessarily want to do. So
Let me check what I have here. I do not have implicit. Oh no, has implicit ground settings enabled. Okay, there you go. Let's do this. I found a random one. So so we go for ID token.
sure.
User do read. Run the app and see what happens. What is that? Tenant not found. What? What?
Well, apparently there's something didn't like something. I don't know.
We'll make it work. We'll make it work and then show it to you one of these days. But it's fantastic that you can run it because it means that you don't have to spin up some console app or something else to just get the get the token and see what happens, right? Or to make sure that things are working. Phil Snubble says, I removed the Git extension and most other extensions to get some performance. I suspect that this goes back to Visual Studio, but yeah, I feel you, man. JP, what are you most excited about Visual Studio 2022? It's like nothing. I don't use it.
I mean, if it's faster, I'll take it. If the Git, they say the Git experience is better, I'll take that.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I would hope that there might be some cool things with. My hope is there might be some cool things with like code completion and code lens or what's it called? IntelliCode.
IntelliCode is much faster.
I heard that might be better, so that'd be cool. I mean, I learned so much about C# via ReSharper back in the day.
Yes.
But I don't want to install ReSharper again because then my fans would be at full tilt all the time, and so I kind of gave up on ReSharper, even though it was a really cool tool and really great to learn stuff. But it is not. It's just absolutely kills my performance. So yeah, I don't know. I might install it and try. I mean, why not, right?
Yes. And
yeah.
So people are asking, what can you do with Rust? I don't know. I was planning on building a console app and run it. I think Rust is super performant and can run low-level code. It's also a one-level up from C++ or C, so you don't have to worry about memory allocation. It still uses pointers though, which is fun. And you can use by reference, and there are ways to allocate. It's also an immutable by default. So variables and stuff that you declare are immutable unless you declare them as mutable. Yeah, Rust is a kinder C. That's a very good way to put it. Almost like Go. So I don't know if people prefer Go over Rust because they're both one level up from C and C++. Again, I'm very early days into Rust, so I have no idea what I'm going to use it for. It's just out of morbid curiosity to see what happens and if I can actually cut it beyond the hello world stuff. And I was reading yesterday that you can actually embed Python libraries into Rust and call them, which means that, like, I was looking for OpenID Connect libraries, and they said, well, there's not one for Rust, but you can actually embed the Python library. I was like, really? That's insane. So there's a lot of interop, I suspect, with Python. But yes, can you use Rust for microcontroller dev? I don't know. We can all find out together. I mean, we can take it on the stream and all learn Rust together and see how fun it is. Go is.
I know there was a lot of, or not a lot, but I know there was definitely Rust. There's definitely Rust in IoT Edge, and like the Azure IoT Edge product.
Okay.
So I don't know.
It's very very memory conscious and very memory careful language, if you can say that. But you don't have to do alloc and malloc like you did with C and C++. So I suspect that it's kinder to the user or the developer. A3 Tech says you can use MN. I have no idea what MN stands for. Wilderness Labs. You can use .NET for MC. Oh, microcontroller development. I see. Rust and Python and pandas? I don't know. I like everyone is just giving us information. I think Rust makes a lot of sense in embedded dev. Apparently, there was a thread internally at Microsoft that Rust should be a language that we use for a lot of things, because of its memory and performance improvements that it brings, plus the fact that things are immutable and stuff. So, or it's type safe as well. So I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, you don't do malloc and free in C++ these days neither. Oh, do you not? Is that like an abstraction or library that manages C++ memory? Interesting. Python in Rust is like VB in assembly. It could be. I mean, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should be doing it. It's not like C# doing p invoke and calling some random native executables. Is that the same kind of premise? I suspect. Go can be used in real-time environment because of the GC. Oh, yeah, there's no garbage collection in Rust. That's the other thing, right? So when you allocate, for example, a list, that's a set number of bytes allocated to it, and you cannot change it. It's very immutable in that respect. Again, as I said, I've only done the first module, so maybe we should do the other modules together and learn stuff together. Let us know if you're interested in learning Rust with us. Totally random on the Identity show. Anyway, should we write some code? Should we do some code? Do you guys want to do some code? There's no. Otherwise, we can continue talking about random stuff. Okay, so let's visit where we were the last time that we did this thing. So I did a quick tour. I spent an hour trying to get TypeScript to work, and I couldn't get it to work because I screwed up my setup, and I was super tired, and it was 7 p.m. at night. But now we have a working solution. Right now, what you see here is a bare bones kind of thing that it's an API. It's a Node.js API that does nothing other than expose some endpoints. Not using dev containers? No. You mean for Rust? I have no idea what you're talking about. Dev containers? No, I'm not using containers. Okay. So if I were to run this one, npm, oh, you know what? I can run it from Visual Studio Code. I've configured Visual Studio Code. Oh, for VS Code? No, I'm not using it. I am going raw here. Native stuff. So I have my VS Code with the launch settings, so I can launch it from here. I have my package.json that manages my scripts and dependencies. I have my tsconfig for TypeScript. Yeah, I suspect though that making dev dependencies much less painful because you just use a container to do everything. But at the same time, I don't want to mess with containers right now. Just keep it light. And if I need to install junk stuff like the last thing, I have a VM on Azure that I spin up. I install all the junk I want, and then if it gets too much stuff, like if I have Node and PHP and Go and Rust and everything else, I just wipe out the VM and start from scratch. Keep my main machine clean for day-to-day work. Because hey JP, I haven't seen any green screens from you. Did you fix the problem?
No, I got a new build that apparently fixed the problem.
It was a Windows problem, right? So that version.
Yeah, it had something to do with virtual GPUs. So
damn, okay, that was painful. Yeah. By the way, that was painful.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. I was having like five or six green screens a day. So I don't know. The other thing I was wondering is, I've been working on an app for some of our partner customers, and one of the things that just kind of blew by me yesterday is that most people are going to be running it are not going to want to download code and run it. So I thought, well, let's just put it in a container and somebody can go run it on ACI or whatever.
Oh, look at you!
And so I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he's like, and I'm using Docker and WSL because I don't want to install Docker for Windows, because Docker for Windows, every time I've installed it, it just feels like such a giant catastrophe, right?
It is, yes.
So instead, I'm using Docker only in WSL and only using Docker CLI in there. And apparently that's kind of weird. So people were saying that was kind of weird. So if anybody's interested in that setup, maybe we'll dig into that one afternoon. So
you know what? I haven't used Docker with WSL, so it might be a good idea to set up a dev environment just to show people how they can do it in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's run the app and see what happens here. So I'm going to launch it. It should be listening at port 8080 or something, or 8000 once it launches. So yeah, it's listening at port 8000. So let's bring this here and let's navigate to that. So that will be localhost 8000. And right now, at the default endpoint, it exposes the APIs that we want to have. One for storage, one for Cosmos, and one for Cosmos with no parameters, and one for Graph. So it's not secure right now. It doesn't do anything. So the first thing I want to do is add Cosmos support in here. And I do have a Cosmos resource on my Azure portal. So if I go into AZ Fan Demo CM, I have a couple of containers here. I think it's the Volcano container. We used this for the on.NET show last week with Cecil and our very good friend, I forgot his name. Who was with me? Man.
Very good friend indeed.
He's a very good friend. Losing my mic. Oh, it's because I'm probably turning around my head and people can't hear me. Man. I've got his image on my... God. His name will come back to me. He's really good. And he knows his stuff. He was in our team. And then he moved on to do DID stuff, right? Is he doing DID now? It's not Matthias. Kyle. Our very good friend Kyle. He is the man. DT he's got a new job?
Yeah, he does.
Ooh, yeah. Nice. Congrats, DT in the cloud. Good morning to you too. We're good. Fellow kids. It's missing. Every time I hear fellow kids, it's missing that meme from skateboard guy. Okay, items, volcanoes. Let's see. Here, we got volcano names. These are actual data. So if you ever want to populate or pre-populate Cosmos DB with some sample data, we provide you with a pre-defined, pre-compiled kind of JSON data called volcanoes. It's on GitHub, so you can go and find it. So I uploaded this list, and we have something to play with. Now, for Cosmos to work and allow us to be able to authenticate with it, there are a couple of settings that... Did I close down the settings? No, it's here. So let's bring it here and see what we need to do. So for RBAC to work, we need a couple of things. First is a custom RBAC role, because by default it doesn't have predefined roles, and the roles that it has are not particularly good. So you need to find a new one, and I have already done this, so we don't have to go through the exercise, but I do have the code for that. So if you want to see it, I think it's here in one of my notes. So I'll put it on the repo, or I will put it on this code sample so we know what's happening. So let's create a new file called role definition.json, and I use the Azure CLI to do that, but to run it. So this is a role name called my read-only role. It is a custom role, so it's not built into Azure, because Azure RBAC has a number of roles or types of roles. And then assignable scopes, you can say whether you want to assign it to a specific container, or whether you want to assign it to a specific database, or whether you want to assign it to the whole Cosmos DB resource. And here we're using the whole Cosmos DB resource. And in the permissions category or list, we're defining a number of permissions. One is for reading metadata on the database. One is for reading items on the SQL database containers. One is for executing a query, and the other one is for reading a change feed. Therefore, and I copied these from the RBAC permissions when I was following the example. So here they're doing exactly the same thing. As you can see here, I copied this. In effect, this is a read-only role, so it doesn't allow any updates or changes to Cosmos. And that was my default definition. I created that, and I also assigned that role to me and my local CLI account. Now, I can't remember which account I used for that. So that would be interesting. I can't remember if it will run. Okay, I think my local account should be fine for this. So now what we want to do is to write some code that will allow us to go and call those endpoints and get some data out. And here I have get volcanoes for Cosmos. So if we do pass a volcano name, then it will try to go and get the volcano name itself. If we don't pass a volcano name, it will try to go and get all the volcano data. So in order for us to be able to work with Cosmos and not use any secrets, because that's the whole point of the exercise here, we need to do two things. We need to install the Cosmos DB library or SDK, and then we need to install the Azure Identity library that will allow us to create a credential that we will pass into Cosmos. And that's the pattern that all our SDKs for Azure use. You need to create a credential object that you pass in. Now that credential object can come from very many different places, including MSAL. But for now, we're going to use Cosmos and Identity to create a credential and pass them in. So first thing we need to do is go into npm and find the appropriate libraries. npm Cosmos. There you go, I've used it before. So the link is here and it's handy. So we need to use Azure Cosmos. I like, in Visual Studio, in NPM, when you say, when you go to NuGet, it gives you the install script. This doesn't do it, does it?
It's up on the right.
Oh, there you go. It's here. Oh, yeah.
It's up on the right of all of them, right there. NPM
nice.
Yep.
Nice, thank you. See, I'm definitely an NPM newbie. You've done more work with NPM, haven't you, JP?
I guess, yeah. So like doing a bunch of React and Angular stuff. Ugh, I do not like Angular. Ugh.
I like the sentiment of disgust there. Like, ugh.
It's just, I don't know. It's just not for me. I mean,
Go on.
Choco Taco. What should I learn in data structures and algorithms to land a decent job in a decent company?
Right. Can I give my take on this one before you reply to this one?
Sure.
I haven't used any data structures like in Anger, like linked lists or some weird binary stuff since university. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't need to understand them and know them, but I feel that any job that asks you questions around that, like I know AWS is super anal about data structures, but unless you're writing low-level code that needs to be highly optimized for certain operations, you don't need to, because most of the frameworks will provide an abstraction on those data structures and allow you to be better at your job. It doesn't mean that you don't need to understand linked lists and stuff, but I feel that I'm not going to spend 3 months learning data structures just to land the job, and then the first thing they ask me is go and change the CSS on this, HTML file, or go and create a .NET web API. Because, in 17 years, I haven't touched a linked list or a binary search or anything of that sort. But that's me. That could be an outlier. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I think there are definitely cases where it is useful. And now, mind you, I'm coming from music education, which is what I went to school for. Right? I wanted to be a band director, and I ended up here. So I think there are definitely times where having the knowledge would have been useful. And so for me, I ended up reading the Intro to Algorithms, 3rd edition. There was also one that I read that I actually liked quite a bit, and I felt was really it was really useful to help fill in gaps, right? Because you learn a bunch of stuff here and there. And so Rob Connery wrote a book called The Imposter's Handbook, and it had a bunch of videos and stuff that went along with it. Yeah. And I liked that one because it felt like it sort of met you in the middle. So it's sort of like, okay, well, you've been doing a lot of work, like you've been writing a lot of code or doing a lot of programming or whatever. And then it sort of gives you the next level down to make it so that you can start to build on those concepts better, which I liked. And But at the same time, too, I mean, there are certainly ways to make. I think there are certainly ways to make algorithms more efficient, and understanding how to discuss algorithms and thinking sort of intuitively about what kind of work are you going to do in the chunk of code that you're writing. I think that's really helpful. It's very helpful to know how it works and to know what's going to happen. But when building a web app in 2021 means downloading 7 gigs of JavaScript packages to make your web app, like I don't think an ultra optimization of your algorithm is necessarily going to be the thing that makes it work. So I don't think that I don't think it's like an absolute requirement to be a super deep wizard on algorithms and data structures to have a programming job, but I do think that some of the knowledge is helpful. Now, I certainly wouldn't have spent, $100,000 on 4 years of school to do that, and felt like I wouldn't do that today. I think it's more about there's an MIT course that you could audit online for free, and it was it was a lot of their comp sci library, and that was really useful too, because again, you know what you know, and those things help you understand what you don't know, which is a useful thing to have. And it also helps you start to fill in the gaps. And so as you get closer and closer, you start to find, oh, I think I probably need to learn about this. I need to learn about that, blah, 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 blah. And you'll start to see how you may remember code that you've written and how you can make it better and that sort of thing. But I don't know. I know there are a lot of people who immediately say it's total trash. You don't need to do it. And I understand that point of view. And there are other people that say you absolutely must have this deep comp sci background to go write web apps. And that's obviously kind of a joke too. So I think as you progress in your career, you find that having at least a little bit of the underlying knowledge tends to help. Maybe not directly, and it probably diminishes, but it has helped me over time. So I'll leave it at that. And then Bolt says, Bolt says, knowledge and design principles over what they've coded in when interviewing people, and I think that's true. I do think that there are very few cases where you're like 100% always going to be writing in this one language, and if you're an absolute wizard in this one language, that you're going to be absolutely terrible in others. It's just a matter of familiarity and a matter of it's really about ability to think through what you're doing and look a little bit deeper. So that probably doesn't say much, but anyway, sorry. There's my meandering response to do you need data structures and algorithms? And if you're going to go write an operating system somewhere, yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
If you're going to go write ultra high performance code that's going to run super low level, yes. But if you're going to build web apps that let people do whatever at work or do whatever at school, probably not a hard a hard requirement. So anyway, sorry, continue.
I am continuing. It's fine. It's nice to hear your rant. It's good to know that you can vent here. It's a safe space. Okay, so let's see what I did while JP was ranting, because it's always fun.
Oh wait, so we have one more comment. Sir Janssen says compares it to knowing music theory and being a musician. And see, I'm both terrible at music theory and a terrible musician, which is probably why I ended up writing code for a living. But it really is sort of a difference, right? It's a very practical versus a theoretical conversation, and sometimes the theory is super, super important, and sometimes it's not. Right? Sometimes it's just not, right? Yes. It just depends on what kind of work you want to do. I feel like I don't really touch that kind of stuff here, but I'm not working in an OS, and I'm not working on ultra low level libraries that run on Metal anywhere either.
Exactly.
So I kind of feel like
to use them. I mean, I know that if I need to be efficient, like I've done a major mistake where once I was loading zip codes or postcodes in the UK, and I was writing a system around that. So I was importing millions of records, and it makes a huge difference using a hasset over a list. I'll tell you that. But I learned the bad way. I made the mistake. I was like, oh, that's taking forever. And then I changed because I looked around and I knew there was better ways and more efficient ways. So knowing that there are different data structures that can help you with your task and what their search capabilities are, like if it's an ON or an O1, then that makes a difference. But beyond that, knowing how like the underlying plumbing of a hash set or hash table is done, do you really need to know that? I mean, you could. It's the same as doing identity and then knowing the inside outs of OAuth and OpenID Connect. You don't need to know these things to the letter. You don't need to know the RFCs at heart unless you're actually implementing your own library on top of that standard. Otherwise, you just need to consume the libraries that implement those standards and have confidence in the people like Microsoft or other identity services out there that they're doing it right and they're building off of the standard.
I think that's a perfect example, which is you don't need to know all the underlying plumbing of OpenID and HTTP and how all these things work. However, when the library doesn't work, when you're in a scenario a library doesn't cover, when you're debugging things or whatever, having that, a little bit of that extra background does help because you know where to look and you know what to go for. But, I don't think, like, I wouldn't go read a spec first for a brand new thing that I'd never touched. I'd go get my hands on it and try to figure out how it worked and then refer to the spec as things either didn't work the way I expected or things that didn't seem like intuitive, right? And over time, and I think time is really the great thing, is that over time, with real work to do, you find yourself having to dig in as deep as you need to, right? And I think that's I think it's helpful. It's absolutely not a requirement. And the last thing I'll say is, unless you're going to go work for, Apple or Microsoft or somebody who's building an OS, if they ask you to do a bunch of algorithms and data structures on a whiteboard, you probably don't want that job anyway, which I know is really hard to say because I know people need jobs and people aren't employed and whatever. But, if they're going to drill you on, algorithms on a whiteboard, I mean, what's it going to be like to work there? So
I've been in an interview that I was told that there is no internet, so I can't provide any answers that require a Google search or a Bing search. I'm like, really?
I mean, the way I interview people is to ask them to tell me about something that they did, right? Because then the subject matter isn't a question, and then ask questions about it because you learn so much about how people think and how they solve problems. I mean, writing code is a means to an end. It is not the end. My end goal isn't how many lines of code did I write today. It's how many effective lines of code were written today. And knowing what to write, when to write, how to look for it, how to design it is way, 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 way more effective than being ultra deep, know the syntax of everything on the planet kind of a thing. Because, it's a problem solving is the fun part. Writing code is tedious. I find it quite tedious, but solving the problem is the fun part, right? And trying to figure out how things work. So
there was a nice analogy about young developers, people that have some experience. So I don't know, intermediate experienced developers, and then senior developers. The difference on how they jump into solving problems. And I like how usually very senior developers will will start with the why. Like, oh, you need to implement this. And the question is why? And then the next thing they will look for is there something out there that has already solved the problem rather than writing brand new code? That could be a library. That could be a different tool altogether. In fact, fun fact, when we're interviewing for our PFE team back in the UK, we used to have this kind of question where we would ask people to create a solution that would be able to solve a problem. And many people will jump in and say, I would use this Azure service and I will use this Azure service and bring this here and I will add queues and whatever. And then one guy just turns up and says, I would use Excel for this. He got the job, man, because technically you could solve that with just using Excel. And people are like, I'm going to use Power BI and a data storage lake and all these things. They were adding complexity to something that could solve with a tool off the shelf. So and that makes a big difference between someone that has been around and solved problems and they know how to address problems to not having enough experience to know what you're looking for. So I totally get it.
Well, the other thing too, when you're interviewing is remember that A's hire A's and B's hire C's, right? Like generally, at least in my experience, good people want to be surrounded by other good people who they can learn from, and not as good people don't want anybody who's going to make them look better than them, which isn't really even a real thing anyway. But it's more like if the people who you're working with, if you can't learn something from them every day, then you start to get stale anyway, right? And I think
Yes.
we all have unique backgrounds and we all come from different places and we've all had different, trials and tribulations and whatever that we've had to go through. And, being able to learn from other people is it's a
Very
gift
important.
it's a gift that not many people get. I mean, I still remember one guy who I worked with, and I'll never forget him because those were probably the best years of my career in terms of me learning. Because he,
It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to say it out loud.
no, I
I'm
mean
happy to support you.
he was so far beyond,
Oh, it's not me, man.
what I was doing, and we worked on a project together, and it was unbelievable. It's sort of like you almost want to capture it in a bottle because it's very hard to replicate. And like Christos and I, like with you and I, our backgrounds are similar and they have some divergences. And so like, there's a bunch of stuff that I learn from you every day. And in many ways, I absolutely thank God, whoever, that you do know the things that you do because I don't know them and I would be awful at them.
Teamwork, man.
So,
Teamwork. Teamwork.
I think,
We're learning
but I
from each
think,
other every day. It's important to be in a
yeah,
team that you learn from,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Best in
My
breed.
first job at Microsoft, there were 80 of us all doing the same thing, but we weren't really a team per se. You know what I mean? Anyway, okay. Continue with your project. Sorry.
Can you join our team? Absolutely, man. If there is an opportunity, we'll let you know and you can apply. We'll always be looking for new talent. I love this tweet, by the way. It came out today. Your
BRB.
resume, it comes with all these amazing abilities. Also, Fortnite here. Thank you for highlighting that visual. And then interviewer. Sorry, we need someone who knows AWS. It just goes to show that if people are stuck in their mindset, like the fact that this person was able to learn all these things and apply them in their day-to-day job means that they can actually pick up AWS and learn about them. It's about appetite of learning and getting into new things rather than coming with pre-existing knowledge. I know that a lot of developers and a lot of people I have worked with, they shine through their ability to learn. So if you have ability to learn and if you want to grow, then any job is good for you, right? I moved to marketing and learned. It doesn't mean I was perfect at that job, but I learned because I had appetite to learn, and I had no idea how marketing worked at Microsoft or outside of Microsoft. So it just goes to show that if you put your mind at it, you can learn it. Going back to the very, very, original question about data structures, I would say just have a look around them, understand what they do and how they're used. They are the same across all the languages. So therefore, if there's a hasset in Java, there might be a hasset in .NET in most cases. And therefore, it's useful, but you shouldn't get stuck in learning them inside out for the next 5 months. At least that would be my advice. Our team doesn't even use them, doesn't come near them, but our goal is to learn every day and be able to explain complex terms to developers like you guys. So hopefully you need to be able to understand in order to explain things. That's the best way to learn. Okay, let's go and write some code. I know we promised to do some Node.js stuff. So what did I do here while JP was talking and explaining about learning and data structures? Is I added 2 new npm packages. You can see them here. One is the Cosmos DB and the other one is for identity. And then I went into the code and I imported their namespaces, or I did a TypeScript import for these. So therefore, I have Azure Cosmos and I have a Cosmos client here, which we will use in a second. And down here, I'm importing the namespaces from the Azure.Identity, and then we will need to create a credential for that to work. Now, if we go back into the example here in the NPM, you'll see a couple of examples. We've done this. We need an endpoint, so let's go and add our endpoint. And we're not going to use a key. Remember, we said We want to avoid having any secrets in our code. So here we're gonna add this in our code. Woohoo. And that's our endpoint, which is not a valid endpoint. So let's go and get our endpoint from root. That's our endpoint here without the port. You don't need a port for that. So here,
In fact, you definitely don't need a port, and you definitely don't need a trailing slash, and I'll tell you why later.
oh, did it break your code somewhere?
It did, and yeah, it does, because the resource doesn't work. Because one of the resources, the resource that the token is requested for. So when Azure AD has in V1, an older Azure AD, there's a concept called the resource, and that's the thing you're trying to access, different from a scope today.
Yep.
And the correct resources for Cosmos do not have a port and do not have a trailing slash. And if you have either one of those, it will blow up and not allow you to. It will blow up and not work. So
that is a scary proposition.
Yeah, I found that out earlier. Yeah, it's not.
Damn.
It's definitely a pain. So
okay. So now that we have that, we need to instantiate a client and then be able to pass around. So let's do that. And we also need a credential. So, I need to duplicate this and then search for Azure.Identity. So we can see an example somewhere. Copy pasta for the win. Did you read this one there was a blog post or something that went out today from Stack Overflow about how many copy pastes are happening every hour?
No, I did not see that. I suspect that number is quite high.
It's in the millions.
Yeah. Each day. Wow.
It's hour, I think. This one.
Wow, that's amazing.
Here's the key. It's like the latest. Where was it? How often do people actually copy paste for Stack Overflow? I know this was a joke for April's Fool Day, but 1 out of every 4 users who visit Stack Overflow copy something within 5 minutes of hitting the page. That adds up to 40 million copies across 7 million posts. That was in a month. Okay, so in 14
2
days?
weeks.
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. And also, people are copying codes not from the highest voted answer, but also from non-accepted or random answers, which is crazy. Have a look at this blog post. I will add the link to the chat so you can go and have a look. Hey, Nitro Game, welcome.
It seems like Stack Overflow has a real problem with age, in that half the time you go out there, and especially if it's something kind of obscure, Bolt, it's the people who copy code from the question that I worry about.
Oh, yes.
But at the other day, I was out there looking at something, and it's so old and out of date. The accepted answer is so old and out of date that it's just not useful anymore. And most of the newer but non-accepted answers were more relevant just because they were newer. So I don't know. I kind of wonder what's going to happen over time. Like a lot of these platforms and things that are out there, they're just not, they're just not relevant anymore. So
yes, it is. My personal favorite is whenever anyone posts a question in Stack Overflow related to disk formatting, someone inevitably posts something that formats some random copy paster's drive. Format C, // identity credential. So what am I doing here? What I am doing here is I'm actually creating a new credential, which we will need to pass to the Cosmos client. And we're using the chain token credential rather than the default one because I like to be explicit about where my credentials are coming from. The default one will try every permutation under the sun or iteration under the sun, including environmental variables. Please don't do that. Don't put client credentials in there. But I like the fact that here I'm using either the Azure CLI credentials, which I think I'm going to stop there for now and see if I have my proper. Let's go and check that. Let's check the AZ AZ CLI, AZ, is it AZ account? So, do I even have an account? Okay, so I am signed in with a service principal, which is nice. That's the account I'm going to use because this is the one we have configured against our Cosmos. This specific service principal ID is the one that can actually, or name, this ID here is the one that has the appropriate RBAC permissions, resource-based access control
So a
configured.
couple questions.
Yes.
So Vicious has a question about RBAC versus resource based, so role based versus resource based, and
Okay.
Azure AD v1. So basically, what we've had for a long time, Azure AD v1 was resource based, and so your and the biggest problem was lack of specificity, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
There was one problem was lack of, you couldn't really get super close on what you needed. Like, I only need these specific permissions. Although you could still say within a resource, please give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give me mail.read and calendar.read and whatever. The big disadvantage for us was that it was static. And so you had to ask for all of them up front. So when a user would go to sign into your app, they might, if you need 20 permissions across your app, they might be asked to consent to all 20 of them, even though only 2% of those users may actually ever use that one permission. And so things have moved now to scope-based. And with the scope, we also added dynamic consent, which allows a developer to say, hey, I need mail.read right now. Please go ask the user for it. So that means that only users who get asked that question, or only the users who need to access that certain thing, they're the only ones who get asked to consent. And so it makes it a lot easier to onboard into your app because all you're doing is sort of flying right through, and you sign right in, and then eventually you'll, whatever. So the advantage for us when moving to the second one was primarily around dynamic consent. So you can ask for things as you need them. Let's see. Resource access is about the internals of the application object access, like mail read, mailbox ID. So the certain products or certain services in Azure, or the certain services at Microsoft have there's a specific name. I can't remember exactly what it's called. I didn't think it was called resource-based access control. It's called I can't remember what it's called. Constrained permission, essentially. Resource-specific consent. There we go. So resource-specific consent is all about not only do you publish a certain type of permission into Azure AD so the user can do it there, but then further limiting that user or that service account or whatever when they come in to your service. So, and the one I think you're talking about, resource-specific consent for like mailboxes. So in order for you to use an application to send an email, for example, in Azure AD and Office 365, in order to do that, we've got to have an application permission. And an application permission, because it doesn't have a user associated with it, an application permission is mail.send.all. So it can send an email from any mailbox, or mail.read.all. You can send it from any mailbox. And so that's what's still published in Azure AD. So those are still permissions that you can request in Azure AD. The problem, of course, is that's too broad. Specifically with application permissions. With user permissions, it's different because it's like, well, you can read my mailbox, you can read my calendar. And so resource-specific consent came in, and resource-specific consent was a way to say, okay, cool. In Azure AD, you're going to use mail.read.all or whatever, but Exchange has sort of a second level of authorization. And so the second level of authorization says, yeah, you might have a token that lets you read all mailboxes, but I know who you are, and thus you can only access mailbox 1, 2, 3. Teams also has this concept of resource-specific consent, and I think we'll start to see it in other places too, where we say, yeah, this application can access Teams, but it can only access a specific channel, or it can only access a specific chat, or something like that. So it can only access my, whatever, HR violation team chat, where we all sit around and come up with new ways to violate HR policies, right? So resource specific consent is it's almost like what you would do anyway today, in the sense that your apps likely still have a more granular authorization structure than what you can express in roles. And so because of that, you might have some coarsely grained roles in Azure AD or in your identity system, and then you have far more specific authorization data that's stored in the app itself. And it really comes down to, where does it make the most sense? If you've got more than one app and it's a broadly scoped permission, or like a coarsely grained permission, maybe it makes more sense to be in Azure AD. But if it's ultra app specific to a single app inside of a suite or something like that, maybe it makes more sense to be in your app and to let your app enforce that as sort of like as a business rule or whatever. But there isn't like a super clean answer, because a lot of it depends on the app and the kind of data it is. And so here's a link to resource specific consent. My suspicion is that we'll see more and more things in our platform start to use this. So here you go.
Yes. Maybe that's a more specific question. Is there a common .NET development pattern for handling application resource permissions?
I have not seen one. There was something called funny enough, there was something called Asman years and years ago, the authorization manager. That was a cool way to do it. I mean, in .NET, authorization policy, but I haven't really seen a good way. I haven't seen like any sort of a package or platform that says definitely always have this. Authorization for storing them, especially authorization policy in ASP.NET is pretty good at letting you define those policies and really good at enforcing them, because you can use attributes and user is in role, or user has, or authorization policy fulfilled, those sorts of things. But I haven't seen. I think the hardest part of that is, where are you going to store all that sort of stuff? In fact, I've been working on this exact thing in this app role thing for B2C, because in a way it is kind of resource constrained, or resource specific consent, or resource specific constrained, because you can only access users that have some attribute in that they are in your organization. And what I ended up doing, I'm not entirely happy with it, but essentially I have the same interface that's implemented with a filter, and that filter's handled, it's a scoped service, and the filter's handled by the, essentially I created a repository for each and every one of them. If I was going to do it again and start over fresh tomorrow, I would probably extend the graph client to do it. But it's not super clean. I'm not super pleased with how it worked. I mean, it worked out better than it's working, but I'm still not like over the moon excited about how it worked out either. But here, I'll send you a link to the specific repository that does that filtering, because it was definitely kind of a pain. You did help me with it, Bolt. I'm not trying to say you didn't do it, but I did a factory.
Maybe that's why he's not happy, Bolt. He's like an indirect. No, we're kidding. We really appreciate any help and contribution from our community, and I'm just making fun of myself. No. Bolt is stellar. We appreciate his involvement.
No, Bolt did tell me it was ugly. So, I had a factory to create repositories, and I absolutely hated it, and it was really awful. And
I mean, have you seen our code?
I kind of feel like the newer one is better, but I think ultimately what I'd really like is to have. I think the thing I'd really like to have would be essentially a way to filter. That part of the problem I've had is that the filter isn't necessarily the same on every single one of those, and so like the mechanism isn't identical for every single one. And that was where the problem came up. So anyway, sorry.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Mr. Extremely. he or she, it's he probably because it's Mr. Extremely, says that we have a nice stream. We appreciate the feedback. Let us know if you want to see more of us ranting, ranting about data structures and RBAC. Ah, God. Okay, back to the code. Eventually, we'll have this up running at some point, but we'll make it happen today, I promise. So right now, we do have everything we need to wire up our Cosmos client. So I added my credentials, so I'm instantiating my client credential here, and using TypeScript actually helps with IntelliCode or IntelliSense. And then it is IntelliSense, we're not using IntelliCode. And then I am actually using that credential and my endpoint to spin up a Cosmos client. Now, Cosmos client has two constructors. One is you pass the direct connection string, or you can create a Cosmos client options object and then pass it in. And we're using that because the Azure AD component, it's only supported in there. Passing the credentials needs to go via the bug. Now, if you type, so if you say comma key, it will expect the actual store Cosmos DB key, and we don't want to use a key. So there's a new property that was added in the library recently called AAD credentials. I know this is stupid because when I reached out and was looking for it the first time, I had to reach out to the team. I was like, I can't find it anywhere. And these guys were, you know what? It's this property here. So latest library supports it. And here we're passing the credential that we just created up above. So line 14, we pass it in here, and that's it. That is our Cosmos client. So technically now we can go and write some code to query for our data. And the way to do that, let's go back to the browser and let's go and look at this. We have it here. There is a way to query stuff. So let's go query documents. And we're gonna use a query, I suppose. Here we can use this format, I guess, and then return the objects back. And we have, let's see, our database contains a volcano list, I think, which is our database. And then for that's our database is volcanoes. And then the volcano list is the container. So let's go and write our query. So I'm going to create a function for this because I like to keep it clean. I don't want to put it inside my method. So for that to work, let's go and create a new method. We'll call it. Do you guys like semicolons at the end of your code? I don't know, man. It's weird. Okay, I like it. I am a .NET developer. I think half the documentation uses semicolons, some doesn't. I don't know, JP. What do you feel about semicolons in JavaScript? He's there.
I mean, I don't. No, there'd be. I can't use it without semicolons because it doesn't make sense
right?
to me without
Yeah,
it. So
I know.
Yeah.
So this is our method, and since this is a TypeScript method, we can also declare what the return will be, what the return type will be, an array. Now we don't really have a strongly typed object for our volcano, so I'll go with any. Some people may cringe about that, but I like it. What is not like here? I think it's because we're not returning. Okay. Function whose declared type is neither nor must return a value. Okay, we'll return a value. That's fine. Take it easy, man. TypeScript is super aggressive, right? Try catch. I love the fact that it provides you with that. So we need a variable to hold our data. We'll call it data. Why not? Any. And now we need a container. So const container equals Cosmos client, right? Then here we need a database, and then we'll pass the name, hard code in here. Let me know what you think. Volcano list is our database, and then volcanoes is our container. So we're grabbing our container here. It's volcanoes or volcano. Did I call it volcanoes or volcano? I can't remember now. Well done, Chris. Not remembering your volcano list. Volcanoes. Okay, there we are. Volcanoes. There. Okay. Down volcanoes. And semicolon. I told you I like them. So now that we have the container, all we need to do is call the query for us. And because we're getting everything on this one, we'll do const results equals container dot items dot read. Do you know, like IntelliCode? I mean, can you imagine working without IntelliSense with all that? And then there's a fetch all. Now, I have to say, this is not an efficient way to query your Cosmos. So you have a lot of data, then that becomes a bit of an issue. And I think the Volcano data list has 1,500 items, so that's a slow query. Just to make things easy, we're gonna just iterate over them and grab the first 10. And there's no, like, I miss link here, right? Link is amazing. You just say, get me the first 10. So there might be a better way in doing it in TypeScript, I don't know. But we'll use a while for that. Because I am data. So we're gonna use the data and push our, you know what? It needs to be an array, isn't it? Let's instantiate array. So now we can actually do push. Ha! It knows about that now. Check that out. So results dot, I think it's resources, and then just index it. And let's not forget to, oh, that's a good question. How do you increment your array? Do you do index plus equals 1? Do you do index plus plus, or do you do index equals index plus 1? Let us know in the comments, because there was a tweet about that and people were a little bit divided. JP, how do you do it?
People were divided over that? That seems like the most arcane thing to spend any time talking about.
It's almost as good as fighting over...
do you put curly braces on the same line or on the next line? I mean, who cares?
But I mean, there was a debate, right? I'm just saying.
But what was the debate? I mean, honestly, some of these debates kind of make me feel like there's just too much food, right? Like, if we had to go out and hunt our food every day, I tell you what, we'd get our work done and move on. We wouldn't sit around wondering, like, should I use index plus plus or index plus equals or index equals index plus 1? Like,
okay.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's a readability aspect of it. Maybe the readability makes it better, but that seems like it's such a common thing that, it's just so common that I just don't. I mean, there's far more esoteric, hard to understand code here, just even on the screen right now, right? Than there is in index plus plus, right? Like, like what a weight, what is an await, what's a promise, what is an arrow function, all those sorts of things that we use every day. People are like, but I don't know. Sorry, I'm just I can't believe that. I
feel you.
I can totally believe that people on Twitter were debating, and I'm sure people were being completely unreasonable about their opinions too. But anyway, it just seems kind of silly. So
I feel you, my friend. So
and two, like what Vicious is saying, it honestly probably doesn't even matter what you do, because the compiler is going to end up catching it and putting it into the most efficient instructions anyway. So might be kind of neat to go look at that too. I seem to remember there was a website where you could write some C# or some .NET, and it would give you the IL for it, and you could just do it all in the browser. You don't have to download anything. So
nice. Can you imagine that? Does it give you the binary as well? just throw some binary into your PC and see what happens. All right. Okay. So we are almost done. Obviously, he doesn't like the wait here. The code doesn't like the wait because we haven't declared the method as async. So easy way to fix it is just saying async, and that's it. Async our function, and now we can do async await. I mean, this is brilliant. Being able to do async await in JavaScript via TypeScript, it's amazing. Intake is saying compiler explorer. Not sure it supports C#. JP, do you know? Is that the website that you're talking about?
No, I don't think that was the one.
You don't think that,
that would be.
one, right?
I don't think that was the one.
Okay.
But
But it could be.
I mean, it saves you from having to download like IL Spy or one of those,
Yes.
Let's see. Let me see if compiler explorer. That's C++. Let's see.
Cannot get Cosmos. How did I name my, oh, it's Volcano. I'm a Muppet. Okay, so it's called Volcanoes. Okay, let's go and quit it. I'm actually running the app while you're looking for that. What I've done is I spun up the app, and now, ugh, an empty array. What happened there? Something went wrong.
Do you have your console up so we can see?
No, I'm a stupid. I put the code in the wrong place. It's a me error. It's a Christos error. Not I didn't pass a name, so it wasn't able to get data because I put the code in the path that said if you provide a name, I'll go and look for it. Okay, there you go. It's running now. So let's go and see if it works. Oh, something's happening. Yes! The data is here, my friend. I mean, it's ugly. It's just raw JSON. But
it was Sharp Lab. That's what I was looking for.
Oh, I heard of that. Is that not like an ancient piece of software? I don't know. Is that still running around? Is that available? Does that work? Sharp Lab?
Let's see here. Anyway, well, that's cool. So you got connected, right? Just using your service principal or CLI or whatever.
Exactly. So if I were to sign out from my Azure CLI, then this code will fail because it cannot connect. That means that if I push this code anywhere on Azure, it will also run as long as I have the managed identity configured and set up correctly. Now, the next thing I want to do on this one is to secure the endpoint using Azure AD, right? Because anyone can call this one now, but ideally we want somebody to pass in a token and for us to be able to use that token to validate that they have the right scopes, that it has been issued for this specific resource, and then to allow them to access that. For that, we're going to speed things up because we only have 25 minutes, and this code is technically has been written for us by our team. So if we jump into our sample, I thought I had it open somewhere here, but I don't. Let me see if it's in a different browser window. Is it? It is not. I think I closed it down. Yeah, so let's find it again. So it should be msal nodes for, yeah, on behalf of. And then this sample has two components. It has a web app and a web API. And if you're wondering how I got there, we have all the samples for Angular and then, sorry, not Angular, for Node. So here, and then underneath there's an on behalf of, and in here, we have an example of how to have a web app built with Node.js. So it's a server-side app that allows you to go and acquire a token, assign in users, and then get an access token to call the API. And the API is doing a couple of things. One is checking for the token, it validates the token, and then it checks for that token in the method. So let's go and do that. What do we need? We need a couple of packages. So let's go and see which ones are here. It has JSON web, and we don't need msal. Now we talked about that, JP, right? It was the MSAL does not do token validation, correct? So we need to rely on different libraries for that. Am I right or am I right? For Node.
That's correct. MSAL does not do token validation. MSAL is a token getter, and that's it.
I would love for MSAL to be able to do that, by the way. But
Well, I think the problem is that when you think about if you think about how you have to put things in, you got to authenticate one direction,
yep.
and then you've got to authorize to go off and do other things. And MSAL is really good at the second half and not good at all at the first half. And a lot of times that's because, like, in .NET, it's relatively easy because in .NET, there's ASP.NET, and ASP.NET authorization and authentication is going to handle validating tokens like JWT bearer. And I don't know this for certain, but my strong assumption would be that an extremely high percentage of .NET projects use ASP.NET. They don't use an alternate web server. And so that's why we have things like Microsoft Identity.web that deal with configuring ASP.NET and then also setting up MSAL. Mm-hmm. Because there is a bit of a play where the authorization code that comes back needs to be redeemed by MSAL, and so there's a little bit of work that goes on in between the two of those.
Yep.
The issue with other languages is just that there is not nearly as much sort of coalescing to a single or even a short list of web servers. So, Java, there's three or four main big ones, and a new one. There was a newer one my buddy was telling me about the other day.
Oh, there is one? Nice. Maybe we should talk about it.
I can't remember what it's called, but there's a new Java web server. I don't know how new it is, but there's a newer Java web server that seems to be, that's coming around.
Okay.
And so I kind of feel like on some level it would be exceedingly difficult for us to figure out what do you do for configuring all those other things, because you think, well, once I validate an incoming token, I may have to write a cookie, I may have to set session, I may have to do all this stuff, and all that sort of stuff is set by something else. So
okay.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, MSAL does not validate tokens.
Just making sure, because if people are asking why are we using that, then that's the reason why. So the sample that you have here in the samples actually uses MSAL to go and acquire a token for graph. So in order for the API to call a downstream API, i.e. graph, on your behalf, but it does not use MSAL to validate the token, right? So for that, we're going to use the two other libraries that are here, JSON Web Token and JWK RSA. One is for acquiring the signing keys, and the other one is to using the signing keys to verify. So all that is handled by those two open source libraries. So we're just gonna copy paste the code. Let's go here in our code sample, and then let's go into our index. Let's add them as well. So somewhere up here, let me close this one. Let's put them over here. JWKS client doesn't like that. What is the problem? Add missing function declaration. JWKS. Oh, did I miss something? Let's see. Oh yeah, we forgot those two. We forgot our imports. And that problem now should be resolved, and we need a config. That config is down here. Okay. I don't think we need the secret, but let's find out. Yeah, it does need the secret, so we're good. The client ID is for our API. So if we go back into our portal, we go into Azure Active Directory. We go into our app registrations, and I'm using my MSDN tenant because I want to make sure like I have full control of my Azure AD and I can get the permissions I need. And sometimes the Microsoft tenant does not allow you to do that. So if you don't have one, if you don't have a test tenant, make sure you acquire one. If you don't have an MSDN license, obviously, then for Azure AD, you can get a test tenant here. So Microsoft, if I can type 365 developer program. JP, do you have the URL handy for AKE? Or if you don't, then I am good.
Yeah, I got it. Go ahead. Go back to what you're doing.
Okay, got it. The config. So, I need to copy my app permission. So I think I'm using MSAL Node MSAL API. So I'm gonna copy the application ID. I think that's all we need here. You know what? No, we don't need it because we're not instantiating an MSAL client. So secret will stay empty for now. We'll use it later on for the graph stuff if we ever get around to do that. So technically now we have everything we need. We have the validation options, request a client ID, require client ID and authority, which we built through here. And yes, good thing I noticed that. That's the wrong authority. I need to go back and copy my tenant ID. And that's my directory, tenant ID, add it here. I think that's all we need. And now if we run, no, we need one more thing. We need to validate JOT or JWT. If you want to see JP triggered, just say that. And now for our volcanoes, we first need to validate the incoming token before we even process the request. So let's see this in action. Is it going to work? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, we have two problems. Public key that, oh yes. Yes, abort. I think there's an issue here with key dot get public key. That API is changed. Hence why TypeScript rocks. It actually saves your bacon. I think it's a method as well. So it actually saves your bacon by doing that. Crucial Ori, hello, I just joined. I see that you guys are working with JWT auth, but can you quickly clue me into what you're doing, please? Oh yeah, we're building a Node.js API that calls into Cosmos to pull some data using the Azure.Identity. So we don't have any credentials over here. Just a quick recap on how we did this. We use two libraries. We use the Cosmos client and we use the Azure.Identity library. We create a credential here and then we create a Cosmos client and we pass those credentials. Those credentials are using the Azure CLI account that we have signed in here. So as you can see here, we're using a specific account that has read-only permissions to our Cosmos database. And in our code, we use that information to create a Cosmos client. And further down, we have a method called getCosmosData that allows you to use the Cosmos client to get a number of items. In this instance, we're going for the first 10 items in the list. I don't want to launch anything. And in our endpoint here, you see that if we don't pass a volcano name, it will try to go and get all the volcanoes that we have, or at least the 10 ones. The important bit here is that all this is done without any secrets. So we don't have any keys or any specific secret that needs to be used to access Cosmos. It's the current account, and when you're running in production, you manage identity that uses those permissions. You can see the permissions that we set through RBAC here, and there's a blog post that we will link on our YouTube channel. So right below, you'll be able to see how we build this. But in effect, we have a set of predefined permissions for our account, and therefore it cannot write. It can only read the Cosmos data. And right now, we want also to make sure that anyone who calls this API has the right permissions from Azure AD. So you need to have a token in order for that to work. What happens if a user closes his session and comes back? If you have already authenticated, then your I think your ID token and access tokens will be in your browser, depending on how you configure your authentication, your client. So they could be in the cache or they might be lost depending on how that's configured. But if you come back and you already authenticated, you should be able to access the data again. But that's in the front end. This is the API, right? So the API is running behind the scenes. So right now we don't even have a front end to call this API. We're probably going to use Postman as the workaround for this thing. Okay, let's run it now because I think we solved the issues that we had with that specific thing. And thanks to TypeScript for helping me out. Let's see, now that's running on port 8000. I'm gonna call it just to get our 403, I think. Or no, it will be a 401, right? Because we're not authenticated. Unauthorized. Damn. Okay, let's fire up Postman. And let's go and get a token. Get me the token. And for that to work, we need a client. And I think I already have a client called Node API client. So I'm not going to create it from scratch, but I think we may need to add some secrets. I think I have it here. Is it volcano or volcanoes? I think it's volcanoes, isn't it? Volcanoes, yes. Send. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. It should be port 8000. So let's send it. Did not get a response. What the?
It's not HTTPS.
Ah, yes, thank you. I would have worked it out eventually. Thank you, JP.
Well, we have 11 minutes, so.
403. Yeah, thank you. Let's speed it up. So we need to go and get a token. And for that to work, I need my application ID. So I need to put them side by side now so we can move quickly on this one. So I need that's not a token. So down here, Node.js client. I'm thinking that's right. I need to double check. Is that client ID? Let's replace this with the right one. Is that the same? Okay. Directory is E801. E801, so that's fine. Secret map probably is the same, and I think the API is the same. Access as, no, is that the one? Oh, can't remember now. What is the scope here? Access as Cosmos, so 4E67.
You can click one of those scopes and get the scope
Yeah,
value.
I don't think it's the same. I think it's a
That's fine.
different.
Just take it out of there and put it in. Just put it in there in your scope.
That's a good point. Just remove these ones or add a new one.
No. Just copy that scope
Oh, that
out.
one?
The one that you need to call. Is that the scope that your app is checking for?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
It's okay. I'll find it. Just first, let's confirm that we have the went too far out. App registration. So the MSAL 416, is that the? Okay. No, interesting. Maybe I use a different tunnel for that. Okay. So let's see what I want to do. It's okay. We got plenty of time. I'll do it. 9 minutes. More than enough time. So the API is running under that. So we know that I've configured the API to use this information. And then under expose an API, there is, okay, let's add a new scope. Let's say access Cosmos data. So we're creating a new permission that we will assign to our client app so you can access the data. And then I think it's this one. Okay. And then let's paste it here for the scope. And then in our client,
you don't have to configure the client.
That's a good point. You don't have to configure the client. So all I need to do now is, okay, go and grab a token. Okay, I was looking in the wrong place. Do I have caps lock? Yes. Yeah, we'll accept that. So we're consenting. What?
Probably a bad secret.
Yeah, you're right. That's a very good point. God damn.
Was it the whole secret? Open the console and look. See what failed. Is it a bad redirect URI or
It should be the last one, right? Invalid client
client
secret.
secret? Yeah.
Am I using maybe it's a different app?
Did not the whole thing get copied?
No. I set up the app in, I thought it was in the client. Authentication. Secrets. I did copy the whole thing, didn't I? With a few minutes to spare, can we do it? Right. Let me close this. I have more space here. They're not. That seems to be the secret. Means the client ID is correct. 8410, that's fine. The tenant is correct. E801, that's fine. Redirect callback URL, I think it's the same. Localhost, which is fine. The API permissions, we don't need them. The secret is here. This thing, let's get new token again. That's very interesting. Back to token details. What am I missing here? That's right.
What does the console say?
Console. Invalid client secret. That's interesting. Should I create a new one?
I suppose you could. I wonder if maybe Postman's not encoding it correctly, or there's something weird. I don't know. It's kind of strange, but
yeah,
might as well just create another one and we'll see.
Yeah.
It's kind of. Oh, wait a minute.
What?
Oh, never mind. The dates looked weird to me, but I couldn't figure out that I was looking at the wrong thing. So
this is the one here. Let's use that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's close this one down and client secret. Yeah. That seems to be correct. What the hell? Why?
I don't know.
Authorization code, localhost, E80. This does say the secret, right? So it almost feels like.
Was that? And you put that's the correct client ID, right?
Yes, we can double check, but I think that's right. Application ID 840. It is correct. It's not using this one yet. Why is, I think it's something wrong with Postman. Maybe clear cookies for this one and then, oh, done.
No, maybe there was an extra.
The client ID
an extra character.
Proceed.
Yeah, something like a hidden carriage return or something.
Sending. Just thinking about it. Is my application running? Are we running? Getting all the data. Okay. Did we get a response?
Looks like it. Can we scroll down? And actually see the data.
Where's the body settings? Where's the data?
It's at the bottom, down there.
Down here? Where?
You gotta like pull that, like drag it up.
Or
There you go.
Okay, it works. But there's one more thing, and we have 3 minutes, so I need to very quickly say that the current code does not check for scopes, right? So if I close this one, and if I maximize this, you'll notice that it validates the token, but doesn't check for the right scope. So it was not the permissions. Thank you for checking Crucial. So there's a nice method that I put together to validate the token in Node. Validate for the scope. If I remember correctly, did I? Yes, there you go. So here, I have it handy in my notes. Down here, you can add a function called confirm request has the right scopes. And I need to have to pass the access token. No, I have an access token somewhere at the very top. Okay, so something like that. Let access token as a string. And what this will do, in effect, is it will look for, I mean, it doesn't know what this is now, but it will look into the scopes, and then it will iterate through the scopes or the claims. And then once it finds the scope, it needs to make sure that there's a valid scope there, and then the scope can be declared as a constant at the very top. So we can say const scope equals access Cosmos data, if I remember correctly, but that will be the whole gist of it. And then in the method, in our actual method here, that we get the data, what we need to do first and foremost is verify, what did I say? Verify, confirm, okay. Couldn't even remember. I'm using, so confirm has the right scope, and if true, then do something, otherwise don't do anything and return a 403 again. So there it is, at 10 o'clock at the top of the hour. I'm going to post this code, so it is available to you. You can go and see that. I'm going to write a blog post about how to implement that. In effect, what we built today is a Node.js API, could be an app as well if you wanted to, that calls into Cosmos without using any secrets. It uses the Azure.Identity SDK to call into Cosmos without any secrets, with read-only permissions, so it can't do anything else. And we did all that in less than an hour. Most of the time we spent chatting. Thank you very much for joining us today. There is going to be an IT Pro show tomorrow. I think we're going to be focusing on metrics. Oh, Cesar Fritz is just rating us now. Ah, man.
What?
Yeah, Mr. Fritz is rating.
Oh, we were about to go raid him. Oh well.
That wouldn't have worked.
I guess we probably shouldn't go raid him now if he's
leaving.
I
think so. It's Lana is there. Joel561 is doing a show. Code Rust is doing a show. So there are a few people. You have to stay for an extra hour now. Yes.
For anyone who's interested, if you look on the screen, you'll see and all three permutations of adding index all end up with the same IL, so it doesn't really matter.
Nice.
You can do whichever one you want, and C# ends up taking the same thing down to just number plus anyway. So if you want to shortcut it, just use. Yeah. But if you look at each one of these lines, it's identical code. It's identical. The IL is identical for each one of them. So, all right, let's go over to Lana and. Let's
go to Lana. Thanks for joining us. Back. Join us tomorrow, 8 a.m. or Friday.
I don't think we can raid Lana. So.
What about Code Rust?
Let's go over to Code Rust. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Some of us will be back tomorrow, and we'll be back on Friday. And join Discord and come hang out with us again. And we'll see you on the other side. Later, everybody.
Send us your questions. Bye.